We're now joined by Troy Martins from the Basic Education Department. Good evening, Troy, and thanks very much for coming through. We really appreciate it. Where did this need come from? Did you suddenly realize that, oops, these school governing bodies have way too much power than they should actually have?
You know, the South African Schools Act was promulgated in 1996, and we celebrated its 20th anniversary just last year. And we went under a policy review process, as would ordinarily happen when you've had a policy in place for 20 years, to look at some of the successes, and we've had many successes. It's been a very progressive, one of the most progressive pieces of legislation in our democratic South Africa, but it's also had a few challenges. As I'm sure you are aware, we've had issues that have been taken to the court, as high as the Constitutional Court, with regards to language policy and other such issues. And these amendments have come as a result of some of these court decisions, but also as part of the extensive policy review process that has been undertaken. So it's one of those where we can't continue to do the same thing. We've made huge progress, but now we need to take it to that next step and look at where the shortcomings are in the system and where we can improve them. And that's how this bill came about. And we're hoping that if it goes through as planned, that it will address some of the issues that we've seen as setbacks in the system.
But there's nothing inherently wrong in matters, being taken to court. If anything, people would argue that litigation actually strengthens your systems.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's as a result of those judgments where we found that, for example, in some instances, and I don't want to get into all of the merits and demerits.
Maybe highlight an issue or two.
Okay, for example, some of the code of conduct issues that have been found to be unconstitutional. The final decision in some instances has to be made by the department, and it's we have been very open and democratic about the whole process, and we are still open and democratic about this whole process, and this is why we've published the bill, gazetted it for public comment, and we're taking on board all of these inputs and so on and so forth. But I think we also need to know that we have a system that over the past 20 years has made tremendous progress, but now we need to take it forward, and we can't just sit back and hope that the policy that we've had for the past 20 years will still be relevant for the next 20 years. We need to consistently and continuously review our processes and our policies and update them, and that's what this is. It's an amendment to the existing bill, an update.
From what the inputs you've received so far, what are the key issues being raised, especially by the parents of the school governing bodies themselves?
Well, obviously, as I'm sure you're aware, they've been quite public about some of the criticisms they have about the bill. Is FEDSAS and FEDUSA and Solidarity have come forward and said that they're not happy about the amendments to particularly there's one amendment that talks to the powers of school governing bodies with regards to appointing principals, not teachers. And this has come as a result of, I'm sure you are aware of the Jobs for Cash scandal, where there was collusion and it was found that there was collusion between those who sit on the panel when it comes to appointing principals. And what we found is that principal post is one of the most important posts in a school that has a good leader that ensures implementation of the curriculum, ensures that teaching is happening on task and on time. Those are the schools that are really performing well. And schools in, for example, rural settings, in urban poor settings, have very similar challenges. But those schools with a great school leadership in place, a great school management system in place, a great school governing body in place that participates in the functioning of the schools. And I think we need to be clear. We are at no point saying that school governing bodies are not one of the most important stakeholders in the management of the school.
Isn't the argument there that, look, deal with corruption, maladministration by all means, but don't use that as an excuse to limit our powers and our influence?
I think we need to ensure that, you know, we are the employer at the end of the day. The Department of Basic Education employs those principals, and that's a very high-level, important management position. And we need to ensure that while the processes that happen with the school governing body recommendations, at the end of the day, that decision needs to lie with the person who will be accountable, with the entity that will be accountable for the performance of that school. And this is why we feel that as a department we need to have more say. But that said, this is still a draft bill. It hasn't been finalized, and this is why these comments and these suggestions we are taking on board, and we encourage them. Like you said, the process closes for public comment on Friday, and we would encourage people to ensure that they make those submissions through the relevant processes, because I know that, for example, myself and a number of other officials in the department have been inundated with emails and so on and so forth objecting to the bill, but those people who are objecting and want to make their comments known need to ensure that they send their comments to the correct place, and that would be found in the bill. If they read the bill, the correct processes are there for them to follow.
Troy Martins, that's where we're going to leave it for this evening. Thanks very much for coming through.
Thanks so much for you.
She's, of course, from the Basic Education Department. Well, the Federation of Unions of South Africa has labelled the proposed changes school capture. The union joins us at 8 p.m. for a full response. Stay with Newsnight.